Hello everyone, this is Jarl XL and welcome to another Gwent discussion video on Channel Duello. Today I'm gonna be talking about Monsters faction and I'm not gonna feature any gameplay again. And if you're following my channel, I did the same thing for Squirtle. The title of the video was how to fix Squirtle. It's not an easy thing to do, obviously, and it's not gonna be easy for Monsters once again. But what I'm gonna try to do here is, throw some suggestions to make the faction better, because, just like Squirtle, Monsters is not in a really great shape right now. People do not prefer to play the faction because it really feels weak when you play Monsters, just like Squirtle. So hopefully in the next balance patch, which will be out tomorrow or the day after, or maybe it is out by the time you're watching this video, who knows. And I'm gonna make some suggestions, and also before doing that, actually I'm gonna discuss the current state of Monsters, like the best cards and the archetypes, leaders, and so on. So actually there will be some chapters in the video. Again, click on the links below. I put some timestamps so you can skip to the part that you're interested in. And without further ado, let's discuss Monsters, and let's start with the best cards in Monsters. But before saying best cards, I'm gonna say like the build around cards. I mean, the cards that are so strong that you want your deck to build around that card. Like Keltos, for example. The obvious choice. She has been, one of the strongest Monsters cards, like forever, and the Carapace leader ability is being used with her, and unfortunately we have this, Siri Dash card, which isn't really a great design. So the Keltos deck has been in the meta for a while, and after the printing of, Witch's Sabbath, the deck is more powerful, but the other factions are so overpowered that even this oppressive deck is just not enough to cut it. So it is really an interesting situation. So when you feel Cautelous, it is really a difficult deck to pilot, and you kind of have to know the opponent's, deck list. So that's one of the reasons that people do not prefer Cautelous on the ladder. And I personally don't like this deck either. But still, I mean, Cautelous is definitely one of the strongest cards, so, you can win some games if you're playing a Kelly deck, with Witch's Sabbath and other, engines like Nithral, Beasts, and Phantom, and, it is a strong deck. It's still a strong deck, but just not strong enough in the current meta. What else? Well, actually, V is definitely a strong card. You can keep playing V over and over and over again, and it is still possible to do that, but they nerfed card hard and the leader as well. So again, it feels weak to play V in this meta, but this is definitely a build around card, so gotta admit that it is still powerful, I would say. What else are there in Monsters? Well, Regis is definitely a build around card. Regis Reborn, obviously. If you're playing a vampire deck, this has to be your, finisher. No doubt about it. And, for relics, we have Bloody Mistress. You could consider this as a build around card as well. But, she isn't as strong as the other cards that I talked about, definitely. She, works as a complementary card, not as a finisher, but, just a powerful engine, that's gonna keep boosting yourself. And other than these cards, I don't see a, card like Saskia Commander. In Squirtle, we have that card, and, you can just pick a leader and throw Saskia in it. I wouldn't say pick a leader, but she is really that strong. So we don't have a card like that in Monsters. So the cards that I've shown you are, for specific leader and archetypes. So actually, that is a healthy situation. You shouldn't have a card like that you have to throw in every deck. So actually, Monsters is in a balanced position. Maybe the problem is the other factions are just too overpowered. Maybe they need to bring them down to the monsters level. Anyway, let's move on. And what about, staple cards, staple monsters cards that, the cards that you put in every monster's deck? Do we have cards like that? Not really, actually. Mamuna can be considered as one of them. She received some nerfs, but she's still a powerful card. Well, the basic monster strategy is dominance, so she really fits well with dominance and the Sabbath thing and so on. And for short round, she brings a lot of value on the board. So even if you're not playing relics, if you have a high powered bronze card in your graveyard, she's a great finisher in my opinion. Other than Mamuna, what else do we see often in monsters lists? Well, Spear Tips received some love about 2 months ago. Actually, this one old Spear Tip, but you gotta include both of them in your deck. So old Spear Tip asleep, is awakened after 3 turns and turns into a 18 power, old Spear Tip. So that's really a strong interaction unless the opponent, interferes with it. Well, most people, test it out, including these cards, but they do not really go well with any archetype because they are Ogroids, not relics, not vampires, and obviously not a Death Wish card and so on. So we don't know where to fit these. They're not Wild Hunt units either. So that's the problem with these 2 cards. But I mean, again, this is a popular card in Monsters faction. And well, Witch's Sabbath is again a popular card. Even if you don't play relics, you kind of want to include that card because it is such a broken card, especially after the buff to Spear Tip. If the situation is ideal and if the opponent doesn't suspect that you're playing Witch's Sabbath, you can take advantage of that situation and bring out the crap cards of your opponents from their graveyard, and then you bring your monsters back on the board and so on. This is really a powerful card, but I'm not really happy with how it's being used. There are some degenerate combos that Witch's Sabbath take advantage of, so this is a problematic card and it's gonna keep causing problems. So to improve and make space for design space, maybe they should think about tinkering this card a bit. So the video is titled like how to fix monsters and make buff suggestions, but this is obviously a nerf suggestion. So we gotta admit that there are some problematic cards in monsters, even though they're not that powerful. Okay, so those were the strong cards in monsters. There's also obviously Ygritte and Azrael combo, but they're not that strong any longer. But we can see that duo in many decks, especially Azrael has received a buff. Let's take a look at him. I think he used to be 9, now he's 8. That's pretty good, but still, you can reset Azrael, obviously. And, well, I guess that's it for She Who Knows. Well, I took some notes, so I'm checking out what I wrote there. She Who Knows, again, if you're not playing relics, maybe you can use her. In some vampire lists, we see this card. The resilience is just a very strong ability. Fortunately, this is 13 provision. The provision cost is too high. And it's not a crazy strong card. That's why we're not seeing this card in every monster's deck. So I think this is balanced. No need to, touch it. No need to buff it or nerf it. She is fine, in my opinion. And that's it, I guess. So let's talk about archetypes then. Archetypes and leaders, actually. We got to talk about them, at the same time. Because when you look at the abilities of monsters, we see a really balanced situation here. All of the leaders have 15 provision bonus, except Fruits of Iskith. And all of the leaders, maybe, excluding one, they're all associated with an archetype. Well, Carapace isn't an archetype, but if you're playing a lot of engines, this leader ability protects your engines, and Keltal's deck is one of them. Force of Nature is usually used with Thrive decks, so Thrive is an archetype, obviously, but Thrive isn't really that powerful in this current meta. You play Koshi with Force of Nature, and you still can use Karanthir with Koshi. It is still a good, interaction, but you need to win 2 rounds, and it may not be easy to do so in this crazy meta. So maybe, Thrive archetype could get some love from CDPR. And what about the rest of them? White Pharaoh is obviously for Wild Hunt decks. Araka Swarm is for, Insectoid Swarm decks, but some, Araka's control decks exists, playing the Glusty Warp card, and it is not that powerful. Fruits of Iskith, again, is designed for Thrive decks, but since Bloody Misters exists, this leader ability is being used for relics, for good reason. And they nerfed Fruits of Iskith, I guess. The leader provision used to be higher, if I'm not mistaken. But when I'm looking at it right now, 12 provision bonus is just too low. Maybe they could, increase the provision bonus to 13 or 14. And I'm not sure if it's gonna make a huge difference, but I think they need a couple of points. Bloodstand is obviously for vampire decks, and Overwhelming Hunger is for the Deathwish decks. But some abusive and degenerate decks are unfortunately using this leader, and I'm not happy about it. Overwhelming Hunger should be strictly used for Deathwish decks. Okay, so those are the leaders. Let's talk about the archetypes after checking out the leaders. Well, for relics, let's start with the relics since I have a relic deck open in my deck builder. Well, these are the relics we have. Crone Trio is amazing, but even in some, relic lists, we do not have room for these 3, although they are quite good. They used to be more high provision, their power was, less. They received a couple of buffs, but still, they're not, staples in a relic deck. It's interesting. And when you look at it, Ratcatchers is a pretty good relic, and we don't have room for her in this list at least. So what I'm trying to say is, they're not standard inclusions. Yaga is really weak. They buffed him, or her, whatever this creature is. I think it's a he. Anyhow, it's still not good, because, you can't just keep eating. That's really an optimistic card. And other than that, what do we have? There are actually not many relics when you look at it. Maybe, CDPR needs to print a, relic with Thrive. Maybe. There is an engine, which Apprentice, this is just a crazy engine. Fortunately, they, nerfed this card a bit. But I think she's fine now. So when you look at it, Relics is an engine-heavy deck. The problem here is, there's barely a control in this list, so you gotta include cards like Dorgrey, Parasite, and so on, at least to have some control. And, I'm gonna talk about that a bit later. So this is the Relic situation here. We obviously need maybe a couple of more Relic cards to make the decks stronger. I don't think we need to buff any of the existing Relic cards. They are pretty good. Self-Eater, Gankane, Witch Apprentice, they're already strong. Lesser Witch is not that great. Maybe we could think about buffing this card. I don't know. And Vampires is an option, and I think it's the best option right now on the ladder. So let's take a look at the Vampire situation here. I really like this, tribal thing going on in card games. So it's nice that we have a Relic deck, Vampire deck, Wild Hunt deck. I wish they're just a bit stronger. Well, with Vampires, obviously, Regis Reborn is our finisher. On Sea now there is a crazy good card, but in some lists we don't see him. And Crimson Curse is amazing, but again, in some lists there is not room for that. But the main reason is Witch's Sabbath. This card is just broken. That's why people prefer to tutor it with Revis. Yeah, incantation anyway. So the organic tutor is being used to look for this card instead of Crimson Curse. That's a problem, I guess. I mean, you should always go for, you know, bleed, but it's not that strong. That's the problem here. Anyway, so this card is a vampire, but it's a Death Wish card, so I'm not going to talk about that. That left Van Eretane is an okay card, decent card. I don't know, I mean, whether he needs a buff or not. Katakan is pretty good right now. Oriana isn't that great, especially compared to Fledder. Fledder is just insane. Maybe they need to nerf this card. Doesn't make sense. I mean, the 6 provision bronze card goes up to 20s or 30 power. This card shouldn't bring that much points. There should be a, you know, top limit. I already shot a video about the problem in Gwent with the bronze engines, so this is a problematic card. Other than that, I mean, these cards are okay, I guess. Protofleather is fine, Necrot is fine. Well, I mean, everything seems fine. I mean, vampires just need a couple of more points missing, maybe. I would suggest, you know, buffing Oriana here. Compared to Fledder, she's weak. Maybe decreasing provision to 8 would be a solution, or increasing her power to 5 would be a solution. I mean, that's gonna bring a few points, not much, but decreasing its provision maybe could open up more flexibility and include, you know, some different cards. Or maybe, you know, just not use Oriana at all. That's also a solution. So for 9 provision, I mean, this card used to be really, really good. Right now it's just a mediocre card, so that's that's what we call power creep, I guess. So when you look at it, so Vampires is in a good state. I mean, they just need a couple of more points, I guess. And what next? Calculus text, I'm not going to talk about that. I already talked about it. What I'm going to talk about is maybe getting rid of Siridash. That just makes that deck awful. If you get rid of Siridash, maybe, you know, you could buff some cards in that list, you know, to compensate the let's say disappearance of Siridash. I don't know. I'm not a fan of that deck. It's really oppressive. Let's talk about Wild Hunt. Well, Wild Hunt looks like a solid deck. As you see, there are a lot of Wild Hunt units in the game right now. Most of them look pretty good. And the problem with this is maybe the leader does not feel that strong. Maybe they could increase the bonus provision, or, you know, increase the duration of Frost. They could think about, you know, buffing that. But when you look at it, I mean, it looks solid. The thing is, it's just not, again, strong enough. It requires a couple of more points, or maybe a better engine than, you know, Wild Hunt Hound or Nagelfar's crew, and you don't usually use Hound. And the crew, you know, does not get as big as Fledder or something like that. That's why, you know, when you have vampires, you don't need to play fruit. I mean, not fruits, but, you know, the Wild Hunt cards. For Death Wish, let's take a look at the Death Wish cards we have. CDPR already buffed plenty of cards in Death Wish. When you look at it, this looks like a solid core actually, but again, not enough points to compete in the meta. That's the problem. And they have some control tools like, you know, Miruna, you know, Manticore and Rotfiend, and also, you know, Foglet, because, you know, they deal damage. And I don't see that card, but I mean, since it's not a Death Wish, you know, the card, you know, that destroys a unit and hits another unit. But I mean, most of these cards are random, so you can't target any cards. I mean, if there's only one unit, Miruna is obviously not an RNG card, and also, you know, Manticore. But still, when you look at it, most of them are random. So maybe that's the problem here. Erica's Queen is really a solid addition to this deck, but this is also a problematic design. Again, limiting design space here. So that's the current state of Deathwish. I mean, just similar to other archetypes, not enough points. I think Thrive is in the worst shape when you look at the other archetypes. Kikimora Queen is just not good enough, and Koshi has been power crept, I guess. I think this is still a great card, but you need the problem with Koshi is you need a round length like 5 or 6 at most. You don't want a very short round, and you don't want a very long round. So it has to be the exact, you know, mid-range round for Koshi to bring a lot of points. And other than that, what else Thrive cards we have? Well, obviously Dragon Larvas and Neckers are foundations of a Thrive deck. Necker Warrior is just an awful card. Why does this card exist? Again, Y1 is pretty bad. So maybe we need buffs to these cards. And that's it with Thrive, I guess. With Erica's Swarm decks, I like that deck a lot. You know, swarming the board and so on. The insectoid theme. But again, not really that great in this meta. Maybe against Nilfgaard, you know, since you're putting a lot of units, it may not be that great for Nilfgaard player. But you know, against other decks, especially like when you think about it, Northern Realms, the engine decks, whether it would be Siege or, you know, Students, monsters just not have enough control, you know, to compete with NR. Maybe that's the reason people do not play monsters, I guess. And that's about it, I guess. So let's talk about, you know, the specific buff suggestions. So we have seen the leaders and the archetypes associated with them. And the main problem with monsters, in my opinion, is the lack of control. Let's take a look at the existing control cards. Well, we have direct damage cards like Parasite and Natural Selection. Other than that, I mean, there are some, you know, 3 damage and so on cards, but these are the 2 cards. And Natural Selection, when you look at it, is pretty weak. You know, just stealing 4 damage. But I mean, there are similar spells in the game, so I think that's okay. So there has to be, you know, more value cards like Skellige's units. You know, you put a unit on the board, you deal damage to another unit, and so on. And there are only, unfortunately, 2 cards that I know of. Ada Striga and, you know, Toad Prince. Ada has been buffed like a year ago, but right now I think she needs another buff. This is a great card design. For 7 provision, you know, you put a 5-point card on the board, and with dominance, there's an opportunity to damage a unit by 4. So it's 7 for 9, but if it's a unit, but if it's an engine unit, she's gonna bring more value than that. But I'm not sure if it's enough for this meta. That's how crazy the situation is in Gwent right now. I'm not sure she needs a buff, but maybe you could decrease the provision to 6. Will it be crazy good? I don't know. If you decrease her power and, you know, make her 6 provisions, then I mean, decreasing power don't make much sense because you could lose the dominance value. So if you don't have a unit and the opponent does not have a unit, you know, more than 5, I will always play with dominance. So the power should be somewhat high. So I think 5 power is sufficient here. And I really don't know, maybe you could add a tag like Relict, but I don't think it's lore friendly when you do that. So she has to be a beast and cursed. So no need to add another tag. Or maybe, you know, print a new card or modify an existing card and similar to actually Toad Prince. I mean, Toad Prince is really a great option right now. Now it's consuming a unit with 3 or less power. I mean, this card used to be 3 or less power, now it's 4 or less power, and that changes a lot. So maybe monsters need another card like these two. Again, the problem with Toad Prince is it's a beast. No Wild Hunt tag, no Relic tag, no Vampire tag. These cards, these two, I mean, people are not playing Striga anymore because the Toad Prince is definitely better than her. So you include Toad Prince, but the card does not have any kind of, interaction or synergy with those archetypes. Maybe that's the problem. You gotta add attack to it. But when you add attack like Relic, Wild Hunt, maybe do not want to use it, or I don't know how to handle this situation. But I hope you understand what I'm saying. So these two cards are really great designs. We need more cards like this in monsters, because the lack of control is really concerning. I mean, there are engine cards, but they all, boost themselves. They do not deal damage. That's the problem, maybe. Okay. So let's talk about, buffs to specific archetypes. And I made a list and I have some suggestions. I already talked about vampires, actually. Oriana needs a buff, in my opinion. She is weak right now. So my suggestion for Oriana is, increasing the power to 5, I guess. I think it's more reasonable than decreasing the provision cost. And other than that, no need to touch vampires, in my opinion. For Thrive, well, maybe Thrive needs a new card, I guess. But maybe, buffing these two bad cards could be an option here. I mean, Y1 is 5 provisions. It's insane. Why is this card 5 provision? This card needs to be 4 provision, in my opinion. 4, 3, and 2, 4 for 5, and, Thrive potential. In the current meta, it's totally acceptable, in my opinion. If you decrease the provision to 4, no one will argue with that and, refuse that. Necker Warrior is kinda tricky. I mean, 4 is not a great number for Thrive. And 4 for 4 is just bad, With Thrive, this could go at most up to 7. And it's just not enough in this meta. This is just a bad card. They should just, get rid of it and, print a better Thrive card like these two. These are good cards, low power and, more point potential. Again, similar thing with Fuka. So it's 5 provision for, Thrive 2. So it's probably gonna, Thrive for twice at most. It's just not good enough in this meta. So when you look at it, if you're gonna play a Thrive deck, the points is just not there, in my opinion. So buffing those, two bronze cards could be an option. For Death Wish, well, I have some, radical suggestions for Death Wish. Well, I'm gonna first suggest a nerf before buffing any cards. The nerf is just get rid of V. The existence of V limits design space tremendously. If you don't have V, maybe they will go to prefer, buffing other cards. Since there is a V in the deck builder, when you buff some other cards, V will be buffed. So if you get rid of V, all problems will be solved, in my opinion. Just get rid of this card and build, print something different. This is a problematic card. I don't want this in the game. So if you get rid of V, and I don't know how to do that, so CDPR needs to deal with that and print a totally different card, maybe a card for Relics or Thrive or something like that. So a high provision gold is needed. So if there isn't V in the game, what can we do? First, we can bring back the charge that Overwhelming Hunger leader ability lost. 2 charges is just not enough for Overwhelming Hunger. And if you bring that, obviously, you could decrease the provision bonus from 15 to 14 or something like that. But 3 charges over 2 charges, make, I mean, the impact is really huge. So I think that needs to be done. Other than that, and they could actually buff some, bronze consume cards, like, Slizzard, Barghest. These are pretty bad cards in this meta, like Barbegazi. But since these cards are being played in V-decks, I think CD Projekt Red do not want to, buff these cards. But as I said, if there isn't V, I mean, why not, maybe, decrease the card's provision cost. For example, Barbegazi 6 provision is just too much. The same thing for, Barghest and Slizzard. I mean, Slizzard is an engine that keeps consuming, obviously. And why not, make it 4 provision? Same thing with Barghest. I mean, they could stay 5 provision or maybe, change another thing. But without V, these cards could be definitely buffed. And then the Fiend card. I think Fiend could be 4 power. So that I think that's a viable buff, and it's not gonna affect much. And then there's this absolutely terrible card, Hybrid. No one ever used this card, not ever once. Whenever you consume 1 or more units, boost self by 1. I mean, even VDEX did not use this card, so it's obviously crap. And it's such a waste that the art card is pretty good. As you see, the premium looks really good. I mean, I want to use this card and see this premium art when I'm playing it. So it's so why not make it more usable? I don't know how to do that, but my suggestion could be maybe boost up by 2 when you consume a unit. That could be a more impactful engine, but I'm still not sure people would still use that card. It's just, when you consume something else, it boosts self. That's not really great. So there is this, I think that's it for Death Wish suggestions. So as I said before, I mean, getting rid of V could be a solution. Let's talk about Wild Hunt. Well, we took a look at the Wild Hunt cards. My suggestion for Wild Hunt is fixing some of the bronze cards. Let's increase the power. I mean, for example, they did that already with Taskmaster. The Purify units have been buffed, so 4 provision is really nice for this. But I think these two need love as well. Like Wild Hunt Warrior. Why not make this card power 4? 4/4/4, and if you have dominance, damage it by 3. I think it's reasonable in this meta. Same thing for Wild Hunt Navigator, 4/4/4. Why not? I think Hound is okay here. No need to buff it. And again, Wild Hunt Bruiser is a decent card. No need to buff him. I think monsters need more devotion cards. Just like, Horse on Junior. Maybe Master needs a Salt card like that, or maybe add devotion to an existing card like Imlerth. Add a devotion ability to this card. Devotion do something as well. That could be an option. And while looking at Imlerth, I would suggest decreasing Imlerth stat to 7 provision. It's totally reasonable. For 8 provision, this just does not bring that high value, in my opinion. I mean, if you have dominance, this could play for a lot of value, but it's not an easy condition to meet. If you have Imlerth, destroying a unit is pretty good. But when you compare it to, Karathi and Heatwave, for 2 provision more, you could just destroy anything. Whereas Imlerth has too many, requirements. So why not make 7 provision? So those are my suggestions for Wild Hunt. And what about Arakas Swarm decks? Well, let's type insectoid keyword and look at what we have here. Well, I'm gonna make 2, radical change suggestions here. One of them is either this card is not being used at all. This ability, isn't a deploy, or order, and I mean, even if it does not have Adrenaline 3, I'm not sure if people are gonna use this. Yeah, it's nice. It will gain immunity and so on, but I don't think it's that powerful. This card needs a rework, a radical rework, and I don't know how to do that. But I have a suggestion, like something like, you know, the deployability with Adrenaline 3 maybe. You know, you wait for this card. When you have Adrenaline 3, you play it with deployability. You know, you consume all tokens on this row and gain immunities, something like that. Or an alternative approach could be like, you know, as long as there's a token on the same row, boost by 1, something, an engine like that. I mean, that works with insectoids. Anyhow, I mean, this is a totally useless card, although it's 7 for 7. I mean, if insectoid decks are not using this card, that means that it's bad, and it hasn't been used at all, not even once. Another, you know, bad card is Andraga Queen. That's 6 for 6. Yeah, okay. Consume an allied unit and gain its armor. Consume isn't great in insectoid decks, and it's good in Death Wish decks first of all. And when you consume it, it gains its armor. Yeah, I mean, gaining its armor. I mean, how many armor cards do we have here in this in monsters? So it's not just a good card design. They gotta, you know, rework this card, in my opinion. Well, with Barricade, you know, you damage self by 1, spawn a drone in this row, and so on. I'm not sure about it, actually. Well, CDPR make this card usable. We can't use it. Armored Aracas, apply bleeding to an enemy unit equal to its base power. Nah, well, if you're playing vampires, yeah, that's good. Again, I think this card needs a rework. It's not, you know, it doesn't have any synergy with Insectoid archetype. They should, you know, just tinker these cards, in my opinion. Actually, Araka's Queen is good for Death Wish decks, but you know, even in Insectoid decks, you don't want to play this card. Although it's nice that you can play Arcus Nest along with Queen. People did not prefer to play this card in AQ decks, so again, that's a problem. And but I mean, it needs some, you know, tinkering again. And that's it for, I guess, Arakas, you know, decks. Other than that, I think the bronzes are really good. No need to, you know, touch them when you look at it. Yeah. What else? Well, there is this terrible card called Tatterwing. It's probably one of the worst cards in the game. I didn't even craft it. The problem with this card is this is also a syndicate card. So when you buff this card, yeah, you're gonna buff an already strong faction in syndicate. So that's the problem with it, I guess. And deploy, destroy an allied unit and boost up by its base power is just terrible. Monsters do not have any use. Maybe if syndicate, you know, uses this card, they can destroy their flying Redanian, and then Redanian will come back. But instead of playing this, they have better options actually. So this is just a terrible card. They need to rework this card, but while reworking it, they gotta think of you know, syndicate while doing that. You know, since this is a multicolored card. There is this non-existing beast actually tag. There are a lot of beasts in monsters, and there are some, you know, cards that has some synergy with a beast archetype, if you can call it an archetype. Well, what about, you know, some, you know, buffing some beast cards and print some cards that likes playing beasts? As you see, there are a lot of options here. For example, the werewolf cards. We can't play any werewolves in the game. It's a shame. You know, werewolf is a, you know, cool monster. We kind of want to use them. There are 2 werewolves cards in the game, like Alpha Werewolf and the Basic Werewolf. Both have immunities. One of them has Thrive. Well, I mean, 6 power thrive isn't great in the game, so maybe they could decrease its provision cost. Again, no one would complain if you do that. And for werewolf 4/4/5, they could increase its power to 6. But the problem with immunity cards is when you make these cards stronger, people will try to go for no unit techs since they can't be touched. That's an unhealthy interaction, but still, you could think about this if you're planning for a beast archetype or something like that. And when you think about beasts, the people usually play rat decks, which I'm not a fan of. So instead of playing rat decks, maybe we could do something good with these beasts, like Siren could find some value, which this is a bad card, but if you have good beasts, you could play her. Right now there isn't, obviously. So when you look at it, most of them are, just not good, except these, maybe. Yeah, so what about bringing beast archetype to the game? So that's an option. Hell, there is this Cockatrice card. Let's take a look at it. Where is it? Totally useless. Never used it at all. Damage an enemy unit by 1 for each adjacent beast. This is very weak, Well, there aren't good beasts in the game anyway, but suppose you have a beast archetype. When you play this, it's gonna play at most for 6 points. So that's not really good. So it could be like, damage an enemy unit by 1 for each beast on the same row. Maybe something like that. Well, that could play for 8 or 9 points, maybe. So, we could think about that. So those are my suggestions for beast archetype, if that archetype exists at all. For relics, what can we suggest for relics? Any above suggestions? Well, I do not have any suggestions. Well, maybe the suggestion is, just to nerf other factions. The problem with relics is, I guess, there are no thinning cards. When you look at it, people play the Art Spore, which is a thinning card for, Death Wish. So to play that, we play the Crone Trio, and Brewis wants to consume that, or play Endraga Warrior just to consume the Arc Spore, and which is not really, great for this archetype. It's not a relic. Maybe change Merlorn to something totally different and make this card a thinning card. That could happen. And maybe add a control card to this archetype, because other than Wispus, there's not a single control card in this list. Well, this is I wouldn't consider this as a control card, because these are Death Wish cards, not relic cards. So when you look at it, no control options. You just slam your points and play solitaire, and that's not a game that I love. Okay, so that's it. That concludes my video. Hopefully you liked it, and I also like to apologize for not posting any content for the last week, because I wasn't playing Gwent, not at all, but I just played a couple of games after reaching pro rank this season, mostly due to the fact that Elden Ring came out, so I'm mostly playing that game. That's the reason. So it's gonna take some of my time for a while, but after I'm done with it, so I'm gonna get back to playing Gwent more often, and in that time hopefully we will see a patch, and then hopefully we'll see some new cards, and we'll see a healthier meta, fortunately. And as I said in the beginning of the video, when you're watching this, maybe we'll see the balance patch for this month, and hopefully I made some correct calls, and hopefully some of my suggestions we will see in the game. But who knows? Not many people watch this channel. Well, if you're watching this channel, I really appreciate your interest, and thank you. I really appreciate it, and hope to see you on another video. Bye bye.